The Moon Knight, Here He Comes. This new drama produced by Marvel got critical acclaim when it was just released. Let's take a look at the new hero from Marvel. This man is extraordinary. Every day, he uses a rope to tie himself to the pillar before sleep. And also, scatter some sand around the bed. He taps on the door and even installs 2 large locks. He does this turn out to be to prevent his dual personality from waking up and doing something terrible. When Steven got up early this morning, he saw no sign of last night's tape tearing. He was happy to come to work at the museum. He is an ordinary salesman in this museum, but other colleagues dislike him for being a nuisance. That day, the museum printed a promotional poster of the Ened of ancient Egypt. Steven approached the curator and said that the poster was missing 2 of the Ened, which was a grave mistake of the marketing department. Although Steven's advice is fine, the curator ignored his advice and told him to do his job and not meddle here. After work, he comes to the street in the evening, eating and talking about his troubles to the statue, but it solves nothing. As soon as he got home, he locked himself up as usual and collapsed on his bed, where he lay playing with a Rubik's Cube while thinking about the Ened. In a flash, Steven suddenly entered the dream world. He was stunned by the scene in front of him. Suddenly there was an odd voice talking to him.
You're not supposed to be here.
Yep, I completely agree. Where are you?
Surrender the body to Mark.
Steven pulled out a golden scarab from his pocket when they were converting. The next second, he turned around and noticed a castle in the distance. He went to say hello.
Hello?
What are you doing?
Don't just stand there. Run!
Steven was running around in fear, followed by the soldiers behind him. He fled to the city and had no way out to pretend to be a religious man. The congregation around him all bowed to the high priest. They expressed their respect in this way. Steven found out why the congregation gathered here sooner. One man held out his hands and asked the high priest to test himself for good or bad. The high priest placed the scepter in the man's hands, and the tattoos on his arms gradually stopped. The scales turned green. Obviously, the man is good. Next was a granny, but she was unfortunate. The scales turned red, indicating that she had sinned deeply before. The granny fainted directly to the ground and turned into mummification in a while. The soldiers couldn't find Steven in the town. A soldier told the high priest that Steven was probably lurking in the town. So the high priest shouted toward the crowd.
I'm a meat!
Everyone half kneeled down except Steven, who was still standing in the crowd. The high priest told him to hand over the scarab, and the timid Steven had to do so. But it is strange. His hands seemed to be disobedient, clutching the scarab tightly. His feet were also not obedient, and kept trying to make him run. Many people surrounded him. Steven's eyes began to roll back.
No, the idiot's back.
When he came to his senses again, all the people around him fell to the ground. Steven had just come to his senses when he found bodies all over the floor, with blood on his hands. The high priest came over with a group of men aggressively. Panicked, Steven grabbed a box truck to escape, but its speed was slower than the sedan. The killers behind him soon caught him up. They race up winding mountain roads. The killer behind Steven directly broke the door and jumped in. The killer immediately rushed forward to wrestle with Steven. He saw that the killer next to him was about to catch up. All of a sudden, Steven came to his senses again. He realized that the killer beside him had died.
Wake up, Mark. If he loses the scarab, I'll kill you both.
I don't understand what's happening!
Truck, stupid!
What?
Truck!
You know, man.
A big truck full of wood was coming head-on. Steven dodged to save his life from this strange sound. But the killer behind them is not so lucky. Steven's truck suddenly stalled while driving. The killers go over him. Suddenly several large pieces of wood rolled down from the top of the hill, directly killing the killers in front of him. While the rolling logs were about to hit Steven, he woke up suddenly in his bed at home. He had thought it was just a nightmare. He had a long sigh of relief. He ate his breakfast while looking at the goldfish and suddenly found that the goldfish was not quite right. Originally repurchased the goldfish with only 1 fin, and now inexplicably grew into 2 fins. He returned to the pet store to ask why this was, but the owner thought he was looking for a reason to change the goldfish and didn't want to pay attention to him. As the two kept arguing, Steven looked at the clock on the wall and suddenly remembered that he had a date with his girlfriend. He dressed up well before the date. Being single for 38 years, he wanted to seize this opportunity. He went to a steakhouse and waited until the restaurant was almost closed, but his girlfriend didn't come. Steven called his girlfriend anxiously.
Punchy. Calling me now? Yeah, I ate eat steak by myself, thanks. 2 days ago?
It's entirely beyond Steven's grasp. The original date between the two was supposed to be on a Friday night, but now it's Sunday. Apparently, Steven had missed the appointment. His girlfriend hung up the phone angrily. Steven asked the waiter next to him. He also said it was Sunday. Steven was baffled and had no choice but to return home and eat the chocolates he was supposed to give to his girlfriend. By accident, the chocolate fell on the floor. He then noticed that the table had been moved. Steven just reset the table, and then he found a hidden compartment on the wall. He opened the secret compartment and found a cell phone and a mysterious key inside. He found a bunch of missed calls on the phone, all from a person named Layla. Looking at the communication records, he felt that Layla was very close to the phone owner. Steven was about to dial the phone to Layla when Layla called him. After a moment's hesitation, Steven answered the phone. The woman anxiously asked if he was safe and addressed him as Mark. Then she asked why your accent had suddenly changed. Steven suddenly heard someone call his name. After a round of the room and no one, he pulled open the restroom door. A person appeared in the mirror. The home lights also began to flicker.
Steven. Stop looking.
This scene made Steven scared. He opened the door immediately and ran straight away. He ran to the elevator when he found a monster in the hallway slowly approaching. Steven was scared out of his mind. Unexpectedly, it was an old lady who entered the elevator. Steven felt as if this was a dream. When he turned his head, Steven was scared again and turned pale. In a flash, he was suddenly on a bus. The passengers around him were looking at him strangely. He looked out the window again. Steven was terrified by this monster. He didn't expect this monster to appear on the street as well. He had just gotten off the bus intending to escape when he realized that the high priest was also on this bus. His previous dream seemed to be very real, but he couldn't think about it in time. He went back to the museum and prepared to start working. He suddenly found that the high priest also seemed to be in the museum. Steven was so frightened that he rushed to the security guard for help. Unexpectedly, the security guard revealed the tattoo on his arm. The security guard was also a member of the high priest. Steven said the scarab was not on him. The high priest told him that the scarab belonged to this god named Amit, the ancient Egyptian god specializing in eating bad people's hearts. Some people believe that Amit was come to save the living, but some feel that Amit is the devil from hell. Steven thought that it was not safe and wanted to run away, but to his shock, the museum was full of devotees of the high priest. The high priest walked up and took Steven's hand, giving him a test of good and evil. But the scales on his arm kept wobbling and didn't give a clear answer. The high priest was amazed by Steven. Steven turned his head and ran away, but strangely the high priest did not order to arrest him. Late at night, Steven was just about to go home from work when the strange shadow in the hallway could scare him badly. Steven huddled behind a locker. He threw his backpack out. The next moment, a strange monster appeared. Steven saw it and ran. This time the monster chasing him was unusually fierce. It was even smashing out several large holes in the thick iron doors. Steven feels that his life is not safe tonight. At this time, the other self on the mirror suddenly spoke to him.
You're not gonna die. Let me save us.
After listening to the advice, Steven gave his body to Mark. Steven's body slowly began to transform. That's how the Moon Knight made his appearance.